A series of recently published articles from Tucson.com is shedding new light on the global religious movement known as The Message, founded by mid-20th century faith healer and preacher William Branham. Though Branham died in 1965, his teachings continue to influence millions across the world, with followers spread across every continent. These articles reveal the extensive reach of The Message, as well as serious allegations of financial mismanagement, misogynistic doctrine, abuse, and the formation of splinter groups engaging in destructive behavior. With global concerns mounting about the sect's structure and accountability, these reports provide crucial insights into the mechanisms and consequences of this influential yet controversial movement. A spokesperson from Branham's cult headquarters, Jeremy Evans, threatened to sue John Collins to bring down the YouTube channel leaving The Message. According to Evans, the inquiry into Branham's destructive cult made the leadership within the cult uncomfortable. Evans said, "It's just times like this, where it really crosses over what we're trying to do, that it makes me just want to shut him down." William Branham was an influential figure in post-World War II revivalist Christianity, known for faith healing and dramatic sermons in large tent revivals. As Branham's popularity grew, so did the fervor of his followers, who believed he was a prophet fulfilling the prophecy of Elijah in the Bible. Branham's teachings, known as The Message, quickly grew into a worldwide movement centered around his recorded sermons, which are still revered by his followers as inspired by God. Today, The Message operates largely under the direction of the nonprofit Voice of God Recordings, which preserves and distributes Branham's sermons. In recent years, this nonprofit has become the financial and operational hub for the movement, generating millions in revenue annually by producing and distributing recordings, books, and tablets containing Branham's teachings. This organizational structure, with its powerful central institution and lack of accountability, has been criticized by former members and researchers who argue that it has enabled widespread abuse and the formation of authoritarian subgroups within the movement. The recently published articles reveal the astonishing reach of Branham's teachings, with estimates suggesting 3 million followers worldwide. VGR, headquartered in Jeffersonville, Indiana, distributes thousands of tablets containing over 1,200 of Branham's recorded sermons, translated into more than 70 languages. With costs of $200 per tablet, the nonprofit's annual revenue exceeds $20 million, and it holds assets totaling $49 million, including land, equipment, and production facilities. While VGR claims that its mission is purely religious and humanitarian, critics question the transparency of its financial dealings. Some of the information available suggests that funds collected from followers are mismanaged or used for questionable purposes. For example, in one case, Wayne C. Evans, a longtime Message follower and father of VOG spokesperson Jeremy Evans, was convicted of embezzling over $1 million, part of which he donated to VGR, raising further questions about the nonprofit's oversight. Despite the financial opacity, VGR's influence continues to grow, especially in regions like Africa, where The Message has found particularly fertile ground. More than 1,500 Message churches are estimated to exist in Kenya alone. The organization's targeted expansion, driven by what it describes as a high demand for Branham's teachings in impoverished areas, raises additional concerns about how VGR's financial resources are managed and whether these resources are genuinely helping followers or simply expanding the movement's influence. One of the most alarming revelations in these articles is the extent to which Branham's teachings have influenced destructive cults around the world. For instance, Paul Mackenzie, a self-styled prophet in Kenya, allegedly took Branham's apocalyptic teachings to a deadly extreme, instructing his followers to starve themselves in preparation for the end times. This tragic episode led to one of the most significant cult-related tragedies in modern history, with over 400 followers, including many children, losing their lives in a mass starvation event in 2023. The influence of The Message has also been linked to the infamous Jonestown tragedy. In 1956, Jim Jones, then a little-known preacher, invited Branham to headline a convention, which ultimately helped launch Jones's career as a cult leader. As Jones adopted Branham's methods of preaching, faith healing, and authoritarian control, he went on to establish his own community in Guyana, where more than 900 followers perished in a mass suicide in 1978. Other splinter groups inspired by Branham's teachings have operated in the United States, South America, and beyond. In Chile, a Branham-inspired leader named Paul Schaefer established Colonia Dignidad, a reclusive community that engaged in severe abuse, including torture and murder, under the protection of the Chilean dictatorship in the 1970s and 80s. These connections paint a disturbing picture of how Branham's teachings, combined with an authoritarian structure, have led to the creation of destructive groups around the world. The authoritarian structure of the message, which Branham endorsed by instructing that each church be independently governed by a pastor with sole authority, has created fertile ground for abuse. Many pastors use Branham's teachings to enforce absolute control over their congregations, with some going so far as to shun and excommunicate those who disagree with or question their authority. In several reported cases, followers who left the message were cut off from their families and communities entirely, leading to significant emotional and psychological distress. A recurring theme in the articles is the widespread misogyny within the message communities. Branham's teachings often focus on controlling women's appearances and behaviors, including mandates on modest dress to prevent tempting men's lust. Branham's sermons describe women as inherently deceitful and suggest severe punishment for women who fail to meet his standards. Former female followers report growing up in an environment where they were constantly monitored and shamed, with many forced into early marriages and abusive relationships with men in their communities. Further accounts of abuse come from individuals raised in the message communities who describe a culture of intense physical discipline and even sexual abuse. The Arizona Daily Star's investigation into a Tucson-based message church uncovered allegations that the pastor, Isaac Moriega, controls his congregation through threats of hell and isolation. Such authoritarian measures are common in message congregations, where some leaders exploit their positions to gain financial and sexual control over followers. In one case, children were subject to severe corporal punishment, sometimes enduring hundreds of lashes while adults stood by. A divisive legacy and a lack of accountability. Voice of God recordings and other message leaders insist that Branham's teachings do not condone abuse, arguing that rogue pastors and splinter groups are to blame for the movement's darker side. Joseph Branham, William's son and a current leader within the message, denies that his father intended to create a cult and asserts that the doctrines have simply been misinterpreted by some. However, critics counter that the sect's lack of a governing body allows abuses to proliferate unchecked, and former members argue that the sect's structure inherently invites authoritarian control and manipulation. Attempts by former followers to speak out against the message are often met with fierce resistance. For example, Voice of God Recordings has reportedly threatened legal action against John Collins for his public critiques of Branham's teachings. The organization's spokesperson, Jeremy Evans, downplays the concerns raised by Collins and others, dismissing them as misunderstandings that could be resolved if followers listened directly to Branham's recordings. However, as Collins and other former members point out, these sermons contain troubling messages about women, obedience, and punishment that underscore the problems seen in message communities. As these new articles demonstrate, the message has grown from a fringe revivalist movement into a global phenomenon, spreading not only Branham's teachings, but also an authoritarian framework that has led to significant abuses. Without a centralized authority or governing body, the message operates as a network of independent churches, each following Branham's doctrines as interpreted by local pastors. This setup has allowed the message to grow rapidly, but at a high cost. Many followers live under the control of authoritarian leaders, with some suffering abuse in the name of faith. The revelations within these articles highlight the need for greater accountability within the message movement. As long as the message continues to expand unchecked, there will be opportunities for authoritarian leaders to misuse Branham's teachings to justify control, abuse, and financial exploitation. Given the history of destruction wrought by some of the message's splinter groups, There is an urgent need for authorities and religious organizations to address the movement's impact on individuals and communities. In the meantime, Voice of God recordings and the message leadership may face increasing pressure to disclose financial records, clarify doctrines, and ensure followers' well-being. These articles remind us that religious movements, however sincere their origins, can have far-reaching consequences, and that protecting the vulnerable within these movements must remain a priority for all concerned with human rights and religious freedom.